excited for those of you who have joined us today. My thought is that you are interested in building a culture of philanthropy at your organizations. So we are really excited to share some tips with you, talk through really why a culture of philanthropy can help you with your future sustainability and all of those things. Um, but I want to just preface this with saying, we've all got to start somewhere. So if you're feeling like you've got a long ways to go at the end, try to take just a couple of tips with you to really start building that culture of philanthropy. We've all got a culture in our organizations, and we need to make sure we're weaving philanthropy into it. With that, I'd love to hand it over to Shauna to get us started.
Oh, thank you so much, Marty. Okay, so I love this topic. I love a culture of giving, a culture of philanthropy in organizations. We've seen it, hopefully all of us have seen it just absolutely cause a pivot point in what we're doing. We all have been in situations where we have been required to fundraise, or we're being brought in as a volunteer or something of that sort. And you can just tell that that culture is not one that surrounds generosity being needed for what we're doing, right? So I love this topic. I've seen it just be very powerful. If you put the effort into a culture of giving and a culture of philanthropy, it's a game changer. And you really cannot be as successful, I would dare say, a 10% as successful as you want to be or need to be if you don't take the time to focus on a culture of philanthropy. So let's start out by philanthropy versus fundraising. They are not interchangeable. And I think it's important to address that. So philanthropy, it's going to be focused on generosity in all its forms, right? So we have heard time, talent, treasure, wealth, wisdom. We've heard these types of things, right? How is that different than fundraising? We'll get to fundraising in just a second. Philanthropy is such a beautiful word, right? It emphasizes that philanthropy really encompasses, so sorry, getting a call. Really encompasses that it's not just contributions, it's financial resources, it is their time, it is their talents, it is their treasures, okay? So philanthropy is our love for humanity. It's focused on impact and outcome, not money. What does that mean? Underscores that it's fundamentally driven by compassion and deep caring for humanity, okay? Philanthropy is truly emotionally driven. So let's move on to that next slide there, Trish, and we're going to talk about fundraising. Fundraising is seeking financial support for a charity, cause, or other enterprise. So when we think about fundraising, I just do not like that fundraising gets a bad rap, okay? Like fundraising oftentimes can be considered a bad word, and it just shouldn't be, because fundraising is the tool that we use to be wonderful at unlocking philanthropy. So philanthropy is people with resources who want to make an impact. Fundraising is the tool that we use to get them to be philanthropic, okay? It's a beautiful thing that we're doing for other people, right? We're helping them to be good people. I think of it like this, and like, I'm not the best at analogies, so just bear with me here. So let's say that we're really passionate about seeing the top of a mountain peak, right? Like we want to see from that view, but maybe we're not the best at climbing, or there are a lot of things in our way. What do we need to use? The goal is to be at the top of the mountaintop, to see that view. It's on our bucket list. It is emotional for us. But we need a helicopter or a lift or maybe like a Yeti to ride on to get to the top of the mountain. That Yeti is the tool that we're using. Fundraising is how we reach our goal, okay? All right, so let's move into the next slide there, Trish. Okay, so culture of philanthropy. What does it mean? We've talked about philanthropy. We've talked about fundraising. Jeff, no, I did not. But okay, so we've talked about culture of philanthropy. We've talked about philanthropy. We've talked about fundraising. What's the differences? Organizations that operate with a culture of philanthropy, if you have done your job well, or before you came along, someone else has paved that path for you, they're going to understand that a culture of philanthropy recognizes a positive and inclusive culture. It's essential for fostering shared commitments, right? Philanthropic values and actions, they band us together as an organization, right? If we're giving towards something collectively, it automatically binds us together. The importance of philanthropy is something that a culture of philanthropy understands. So everyone within your culture or your workplace understands why you need philanthropy. We are a nonprofit. We cannot continue to do what we do without philanthropy. This is a really hard connecting point to make, oftentimes in organizations, especially if you're dealing with physicians or you're dealing with people who consider what they do to be their craft. Helping people to understand the importance of philanthropy and how it affects their work, game changer. Once you're able to cross that bridge, it makes all the difference. And then the link between philanthropy and fundraising. Okay. So organizations that have done a really good job with culture of philanthropy, they understand that fundraising is a practical tool that enables them to turn their philanthropic aspirations into concrete actions, right? So they understand that your job is to fundraise in order to meet the organization's goals. They understand that fundraising helps us achieve philanthropy. Okay, great cultures of philanthropy, they're going to have all three of these things. All right, next slide, please, Trish. So, benefits of having a strong culture of philanthropy. First of all, it just feels better to come to work. I mean, honestly, it does. It feels better to come to work, not only as the fundraiser, but as someone who is giving and understanding that other people are giving to the mission and what you do every day, and you are too. You're automatically bought in, right? So, as a positive impact on organizational sustainability, we know that people are supporting us. We know that we are going to be able to sustain our work because of philanthropy. That's powerful. That's a powerful come alongside that philanthropy can be so powerful that it can help us continue to do our work. Culture of philanthropy, strong cultures of philanthropy, they're going to improve donor relationships and engagement. How? Because the values are ingrained in the organization's culture and donors feel that. How many times have you brought a donor into your ministry, into your mission, and you have wanted them to see your best employees doing their best work, right? When you have a strong culture of philanthropy, that is woven everywhere you go. So you don't have to worry about the troublemakers, right? And then also enhances staff morale and motivation. I've seen this, and I want you all to see it if you haven't had the opportunity to see the change in staff morale and motivation when they decide to give and when they decide to embrace a culture of philanthropy. People are going to push up against it in the beginning. They're not going to understand it, but you're going to do your job really well to make sure that it is something that is prioritized. Marty's going to talk a little bit more about that later, but it is something that's prioritized by your leadership. It's spoken about, it is valued, not just in the development office. It makes people feel like a team. It makes them feel valued, and that increases morale and motivation. So they're actually doing better jobs for the mission because of philanthropy. It's so cool. Okay, and then last slide for me, and then we'll hand it over to Marty in just a moment. What are your key elements of a strong philanthropic culture? What do we need to get right out of the gate? Okay, so leadership. Leadership, I mean, it goes without saying that people need to lead by example, okay? So your leadership has to be bought in and they have to be pitching it as well, okay? You need to have a clear mission and vision. I would say that this is don't do double the work, okay? Don't do double the work. Align your philanthropy goals to your organization goals, and that's going to help you stay clear. Oftentimes we'll come into an organization, or I've came into, like different places, and you've got your foundation or your fund development going one way that is kind of on their own path, and you've got your organization going this way, and it confuses people. It not only confuses your internal people, it confuses your donors, right? So just align. Work with your teams to align your philanthropic efforts with your organization goals. Trust me. Inclusivity and collaboration. Make sure you're not leaving anyone out. This always comes back to bite you. And where I can use the most clear example of this is when you're doing employee appeals, you're working with employees. If you have employees who work night shift, make sure that you're not doing all of your stuff for day shift and leaving night shift out, because that night shift, they'll be like a piranha and they will just be so negative and feel left out. You don't want to do that. It's easy to include everyone. Just make sure that you are being mindful of it. Okay. Donor-centric approach. Relationships, relationships, relationships. We're always pushing relationships, but don't be pushy. Okay. But also relationships. And then once you're focused on building those relationships, you're going to learn about their passions. For example, I am very passionate, unfortunately, about carbs. So I was very interested to hear that I can put mushrooms on my pizza today, and that I can also celebrate by eating waffles and biscuits and gravy, because what better carbs to eat, if I may so myself? And that's because relationships are built and you are able to learn about passions. Okay. So then also transparency and accountability. Let's demonstrate responsible use of funds. What does that mean? It makes sure that you can not only lay your head on the pillow at night and sleep soundly because you know that you're being a good steward of people's money, but it resonates. It resonates within you, your department, and then that kind of spiders out. The teams that you're asking to give, the donors that you're asking to give, they understand that there is transparency, that you are a good steward, and that you're accountable with the money that is being donated. So those are key elements. I'm going to pass it over to Marty, and she's going to lead us into more of the tips and tricks.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Now that y'all know kind of the components, let's dig into some of those strategies, right? Because it can be really easy to say this is what it should look like, but how do we actually get there, right? You have to be intentional about building a culture of philanthropy and nurturing that culture. If you don't already have educational and training opportunities for your staff, shame on you. You need to schedule it. You cannot assume that they are going to just understand. We have to give them messaging. We have to give them scripting once in a while. We have to do role playing with them to get them to understand, right? So, training the staff and also your volunteer leadership on the importance of philanthropy. Everyone has to understand that fundraising and philanthropy are critical to your organization and that everyone has a role in the process. If we are taking steps to educate and train and give them scripting and messaging, they can then convey those messages effectively with donors, with prospective donors, and they can permeate through your organization. It is impossible to have a culture of philanthropy just in your philanthropy department, your foundation, your fundraising team, right? You have to engage your entire organization, and you've got to be intentional in what you're asking of them. So you need to script things for them to get them comfortable with speaking about it. You need to help them identify if they're complimented. How can they weave in an opportunity for someone to understand that they too can be a part of making a difference? You need to really celebrate those individuals who do have an impact and just get it so that other people want to have that same behavior and be recognized as well, right? So education and training are super important components in building out a plan that helps people understand what philanthropy is, why that matters to the organizational health of your organization, and not only the overall health, but the individuals and their jobs. Break it down to specific job types and how it impacts them and what that means in their day-to-day and why philanthropy makes their job better, easier, faster, stronger, all of those things. Number two, and sort of segueing into this, integrated in job descriptions. If you are able to ensure that part of their job means that they have to be playing a role in philanthropy, there's no better way to move the needle, right? Everyone is an ambassador for your service. They're also an ambassador for your philanthropy and fundraising. So it means more than just doing your own job, but it means understanding how you work all together as an organization and how the way they treat their end customer may be a different end customer than someone else, right? Everyone has a different end customer at the end of the day, but how treating the end customer with care and respect can truly inspire giving. So making sure that, if I'm a cleaner, that I understand it matters if I smile and say hello to a patient who walks in the room, right? If I am delivering service and care to someone, or if I'm a teacher and I'm teaching someone, it matters how the family feels, right? It matters when I'm representing the organization out into the community, how I represent the organization. So, really incorporating opportunities within job descriptions to highlight philanthropy, and make sure that people understand why that matters to them and their end role. And encouraging all staff to participate in any sort of fundraising effort, right? And just being a piece of it. We talk all the time about how a really well executed fundraising ask, you have a connection, a cultivation that happens, and then a close. People on the front lines can be an integral part of that cultivation process. They can help connect you to the people that they know are really happy with the service you have delivered. They can do all sorts of things that do not involve fundraising, making the ask, the actual act of soliciting a gift, but that really and truly are all the hard work so that people are led to that place where they can really unleash their philanthropy and make the gift that they're wanting to make. So find opportunities to engage people in the connection, the cultivation, and just the overall, treating people how others would want to be treated. Next slide, please. Storytelling. This is such a big one. We've got to ensure that people who have a good story to tell have an easy way to share that with others. So we've got to make it easy for our teams to capture stories, because sharing impactful stories that demonstrate impact really truly helps inspire donors, because it helps them to connect emotionally with your cause, right? We always say facts tell, but stories sell. How many of us are like, I need a good story. I don't have a story. I've got this, appeal I need to do, and I need a good story. If we haven't proactively put things in place to permeate the organization so that we have a bank of stories, shame on us. We should have stories at the ready, because we already should have empowered our teams through perhaps something in their job description or something to incentivize them to report back good stories, or to connect people who are saying, hey, I have a story to tell, with the fundraising team, so that we can use that as part of our philanthropy. Storytelling, so powerful. Just having regular communication with donors and prospective donors. We've got to keep our biggest fans, our family, updated on our organization's progress and achievements. It is so easy to get in the weeds, doing all the work and being like, why doesn't anyone give to us? We do so much great stuff, but nobody knows about it. We find this all the time when we're doing feasibility studies, where people are like, I just don't think anybody knows about this organization. The people who know the organization, they are so passionate and understand what's going on. But if everyone in town knew about all the good work, how amazing would that be? Guess what? That is a thoughtful, actionable item that we can do. We can communicate with the people that we know. We can make it easy for them to communicate beyond their networks. We can give them scripting. We can give them messaging. There are things that we can do to help keep our volunteers and donors updated, and ask them to help share our stories outside of our circles. And that is truly a way for us to make a difference. We've got newsletters, we've got social media, we've got events, we've got all sorts of communication channels. And by having a specific strategy in place to do regular communications, you will definitely move the needle in this area. Communication is so key. And it's something that a lot of organizations don't understand or do well. And it really, really helps to warm people up to the idea of philanthropy, because otherwise they just don't know, right? They don't know what they don't know. So we have to tell them. Next slide, please. And finally, if we are able to effectively cultivate, engage, and steward people, we're going to truly, truly have a strong culture of philanthropy. Make sure that you host some events. I'm not encouraging you to go out and say, hey, we've got to have a big fundraiser event. Hear me correctly here. Engage in events where you are able to steward your donors. Allow them to interact with what you're doing. Tell them thank you. These are the people who have already made a gift to you. Organize gatherings where they can connect with the organization, the people who work there, the other supporters, and feel truly a part of your tribe, because they want to know what's going on. If we're able to showcase projects and successes firsthand, invite them to a groundbreaking, a ribbon cutting, anything you can do to show and celebrate milestones along the way, is truly impactful. When you're invited as a donor to take a tour, a behind the scenes tour, you feel special, you feel a part of the family, you feel recognized. And guess what? If you utilize your staff to conduct a tour, they're bought in. That culture of philanthropy works both ways, right? We have to build an internal culture of philanthropy, but also an external one within our communities. The stewardship, the engagement, the recognition publicly, acknowledging, celebrating contributions on a consistent basis. Recognition, it's a way to thank and acknowledge the donor, and they feel really good about that, but it is also a way to inspire other people. And it's equally as important to publicly do things so that people say, wow, that organization is doing things and they're showing appreciation. I want to be a part of that. How do I get involved? Right. And then last but not least, show gratitude through personalized thank yous. Engage your teams, your staff, your volunteers in the fun, recognizing and thanking people. It's so much fun for people to say, thank you. You helped make this happen. You helped me. I work on the front lines with the delivery of service, and you help make my job better. Let them say thank you in their own way to your donors. And you truly will see, a little extra pep in their step, right? That positive reinforcement is going to encourage those repeated behaviors that's going to continue to nurture that culture of philanthropy in your organization. Moving on to the next slide. I like to show this because this is something that we use as we're working with clients to try and help them expand their prospect base, because it's a very great infographic to show how we can move the needle in really getting in front of the people who may have an ability and an inclination to want to give to support our organizations, right? Internally, if we're focusing on those people who have an inclination, those people who say, you have been incredible. You saved my life. You helped transform my child's. Those types of things, they say thank you. We've got to give them a way to get involved, right? So everyone across the organization, we call this a grateful family program oftentimes, helping to identify people who might be inclined to want to support the cause, helps bring those people into our prospective donor pipeline, right? Externally in the community, when we have volunteers out there helping say, hey, gosh, I know this person is looking to get involved philanthropically, or they have just sold a business, or they just inherited some money, or wow, their kids just graduated and they don't have the college bills anymore. Those types of things, knowing who might have an ability to do something transformational out on there, helps put them into the pipeline so that we can share the stories and the messaging. You see how this all just sort of works together in a symbiotic way, for us to be able to have conversations, to inspire giving, to have the biggest impact possible. And I think we are to the final slide and right within our timeline, and then we'll open it up for any questions that anyone has. But just sort of wanted to, have a few reminders as you go forth, right? A culture shift does not happen overnight. So picking just a couple of the key strategies that I've mentioned can help you get started. You can get some momentum so you can continue to build on it. It's built by including every single person in the process. Something Shauna said reminded me, having an employee giving drive is a key important piece to culture of philanthropy. And so many organizations are like, we cannot ask anything more of our staff because they're so tapped already. We cannot ask them to support us and give. Like, that's just not going to work. And I always counter that with, you know what, we have to tell them what we're doing, and we have to give them the opportunity, just like anyone else, to be involved. And many of the lower paid people are so passionate, they will do their part and they will be a part of it. And you will see a tremendous buy-in across the organization. And it's about them feeling respected and a part of it. And that is so important. So anytime people try to say, oh, we're just not going to do an employee drive because we just can't ask them, you're not including them, right? You have to make sure they're included first. So I think that's just a helpful reminder in that culture shift. Strong leadership commitment is going to set the tone. If your CEO is not giving, your board's not giving, it's very, very difficult to go out into the community and make an ask if you're not having 100% participation from everyone at the top leading the organization, both staffing wise and volunteer wise. We've got to focus on a strong leadership commitment first to set the tone for any sort of culture of philanthropy. Focusing on that donor-centric approach and relationship building. I mean, we are in the business of building relationships. It is not transactional. Every single person who gives to us should feel as appreciated as the next, whether they're $1 million donor or a $10 donor. If they are feeling that impact and feeling a part of the family in the same way, we have done our jobs, right? We've got to focus on the donors and focus on that relationship building so they feel like they've been meaningfully engaged and involved every step of the way. And we have to celebrate successes. Again, that positive reinforcement, both to the staff and to the donors and to the volunteers. If we're not celebrating along the way, it's very, very difficult to keep the momentum to continue to grow and inspire that enhanced culture of philanthropy. So with that, I'm happy to open it up for any questions that anyone might have.